up tonight. Councillor McKelvey is chair of Scarborough Community Council and will be speaking after Dave Hardy tonight. So, tonight's speaker, Dave Hardy. Dave is well known to many of us as a founding board member of SCRO and the driving force behind the Renew Scarborough campaign led by Scarborough's Rotary Clubs, which led to the founding of SCRO and to the Scarborough Business Association and also the Institute for New Suburbanism. Dave was born and raised in Scarborough, and he is a fellow Woburn Collegiate boy, although Dave was a few years ahead of me. Dave raised his family here and moved away just a couple of years ago, but remains deeply connected to Scarborough through SCRO and through the North Scarborough Rotary Club. And he recently wrote a book, and I know he's too modest to include that in his presentation tonight, so let me do that for him. I'm not sure if you can see this or not. It's called Who Are These People and Why Are They Yelling at Me? Which is a really cool name for a book. It's basically a chronicle of Dave's life as a professional facilitator, skills which served Dave well and which served SCRO well during the Renew Scarborough campaign, and also at the SCRO Community Association Summit back in 2018. So Dave, we thank you for launching the Our Scarborough program tonight. But before I throw to Dave, let me remind you about the chat room. We welcome your questions, which we will pose to Dave afterwards. And we welcome your comments. What do you like about Scarborough? I want to introduce Jim Fott, who introduced himself a little earlier. Jim is a fellow SCRO board member. Jim will be moderating the chat room and will be asking questions on your behalf afterwards. So please keep the chat room busy. And Dave, over to you.
Okay, so if you can allow me to share screen.
You've got it.
Okay, let me see here. Let's see, am I up?
Choose the window and then do the share screen.
Choose the window.
Yes, John.
Sorry, I'm doing shared screen and then.
When you do the shared screen on the green on the bottom, then it should pop up with your desktop, and then you choose which application or which screen you want to share.
Okay.
Yeah, do that.
And then
I just like to hear what Dave has to say. I can record it though.
Okay, so I've got the PowerPoint up on my screen.
Yeah, now, yeah, you should have on your screen, but you have it on the shared screen from Zoom. Well, you did it so well on Tuesday.
Okay, shared screen. Huh. Share PowerPoint.
If not, I can bring it up here. But
Yeah, can you bring it up?
well, I'll bring it up as the PowerPoint.
Okay.
Sorry, as the PDF.
PDF is fine. There we go. So Gerard, I'm going to have just ask you to run through it. Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
No, that's too big a screen, right?
No, it's fine.
It is?
Yeah, it looks good.
Okay.
Okay. So first of all, thank you very much for asking me to be the first speaker on the SCRO Speakers Series. Actually, I'm honored. Gerard, next slide, please. Yeah, so I'm going to start off with a couple kind of preamble remarks. I'll talk for about 30 minutes, but I wanted to just kind of let you know that you're going to hear a presentation from a land use planner. I know there's a couple planners on the call and we're kind of weird. So, you know, we tend to really focus on maps. So if I spend too much time on a map, I just need somebody to kind of kick me and I'll move on. As Larry said, I grew up in Scarborough, raised my family in Scarborough, and although we moved downtown a couple of years ago, so you're getting a perspective of a long-term residence plus perspective of somebody looking in on Scarborough as well. My presentation tonight is going to be focusing on the positive. I know we obviously have issues and matters to talk about that are potentially problematic. Those are for other talks. Tonight is a very positive presentation, and I certainly don't apologize for that. I'm going to do a countdown of the 5 most desirable characteristics of Scarborough. And in terms of chat, if you are thinking of other characteristics as well that maybe on your top 5, let's talk about that as we move forward. So Gerard, you want to, next slide, please. So I'm going to start off with a couple observations. You know, about 25% of Toronto's population is in Scarborough, and what we're seeing is across North America, the suburbs are an increasingly desirable place to live. So we're pretty well positioned. Scarborough has a large population. We're actually growing, which a lot of municipalities in North America wish they could be growing. And our population is approaching 700,000, a larger population than a number of Canadian provinces. And so that's quite impressive. Gerard, go ahead, please. So number 5 is, so I'm going to go 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So 5, we have good bones and we've been designed for quality of life. So I'm going to get into my first map now. I'll acknowledge that we have our ancestors include the Huron and the Iroquois, and you can see their presence through Tabor Hill Park and some of the trails that have turned into roads and so on. So they're the original settlers of Scarborough, with Lieutenant Governor Simcoe coming in. He laid out the road network, which is the grid patterns. So the Warden, the Kennedy, the Cowan roads, the Ellesmere and Lawrence and so on, were all laid out in kind of earlier, long time ago, when we were kind of a rural community. We started off being settled with kind of a linear road pattern, and that was kind of just continuing how the city of Toronto had been planned. But one interesting thing is that after World War II, we became a planned community. So what you see is the result of people like myself and Jillian and a few others on the call getting together and saying, how do we make the best community we can in Scarborough? We saw the example of Don Mills and Don Mills was a radical departure from all the rest of the subdivisions being planned all over. And it got worldwide attention as being a great subdivision where you had a kind of a community center in the middle, a shopping in the middle, pathways, trails, connected communities, and a mix of low and high income or high density housing. What you see here on the map, and I won't go on the map too long here, but basically the yellow on the map is designed, that's where the single family homes are. And the streets are designed so that it's low density, it's for families, it's to create neighborhoods, it's to get people talking to each other. You can feel safe that your children are playing on the front lawn. A child can feel safe walking to school. Kids can play hockey on the roads. So it's designed not to have traffic go through those areas. So that's deliberately planned all across Scarborough as a way to have homes that are families, that are good for families. But you also see the green and the aqua colors are the schools and the parks. So the parks are central to how we planned our communities in Scarborough. And this particular one up at Woodside Square with Sanders Circle, it has a trail going through it. It has the higher density is the brown, and that was purposely planned along the avenues and the linear streets and so on to provide for good transportation for people living there and also keep people moving. But they also had access to the interior of the suburban area so that people could use those amenities. The blue is the jobs area, and that was planned kind of to be interspersed between communities in Scarborough so that if you had a job there, it was really very easy to get home from work. So that was very purposefully planned. So I won't go on too much longer, but you know, the way Scarborough is planned in terms of our good bones and our good design is we had networks and hierarchies of retail stores, particularly with the Scarborough Town Center, where it had a civic center, high-end jobs and offices, and also a very large and important retail hub as well. So with all that comes together, Scarborough is one of the highest density suburbs in North America. We're getting even more dense, but it's really interesting how we've planned ourselves so that we can have that quality of life in all sorts of different areas. Next slide, Peter, or Gerard, I should say. I'm not going to go any more maps for the time being because I just will go crazy if I had too many maps in front of me. But I just wanted to let you know that the names of our subdivisions were planned, or the names of our communities were planned, starting with trying to keep up or keep the names of original post offices and churches and places like that that were in the rural area, but they were continued and added to in a way to name these communities to provide a sense of community and a sense of place. And what we have is a lot of ratepayer organizations and community associations that come together and they have community festivals and lawn sales and all sorts of other things going on in these communities to try to bring the community together. So it works very well. Next slide, please. We also have some pretty good architecture. I'd like to see a lot more, but when I started thinking of the architecture in Scarborough, we have some really good architecture to be proud of. On the slide on the left is the Cedar Brae Library. It has the new architecture with a lot of glass and wood, but behind it is the old architecture, which is with the peaked roofs, allowing sunlight to come right in the building. That architecture was also duplicated up in Belmere Public School as well. A very unique architecture at the time, award-winning. I've got Scarborough Campus, UTSC, also award-winning when it was built, a really departure of the architecture. And we can go on through, I know the Scarborough Animal Shelter is really unique. The Guild, of course, the Scarborough Library. So there's a lot of good architecture around as well. Next slide, Gerard. When people learned that I was giving kind of a top 5 of the best things about Scarborough, they said, hey, don't forget about the parks and all the rest, because everybody has a favorite park in Scarborough. And I can't profile them all, so I'm sorry, folks, but I'm going to talk about a couple of them. The Guild Inn Trail is really marvelous. It's through the original Carolinian forest. A Carolinian forest is a forest that really never got cut down during pioneer times. So you can see remnants of old trees and stumps and things like that. Of course, we have a lakefront that I think we need to promote an awful lot more. And it's really well used by all of Scarborough to the point where, as you know, in a very busy weekend, they have to kind of cut off because it's such a popular site. Next slide, please. We have Thompson Park on the right here. And I love being in Thompson Park because when I go there on a Saturday or Sunday afternoon, I can see large extended families celebrating birthdays or certain family days. I see cultural groups celebrating, getting together. And it's really a well-used park and well designed as well. The slide on the left is the mouth of the Rouge. I wish I could say I was on one of those paddle boards doing yoga, but I think my yoga days are a bit behind me. But you see fishermen and people on paddle boards and hikers. And I was in the Rouge Park a couple of weeks ago, actually with my daughter, and it is a fabulous asset for this community. A great place. One of the only federal parks that there are. So anyways, next slide, please. And so now I'm moving from number 5 to number 4. And it may be a bit odd for me to be pointing to businesses and institutions as being great assets and great reasons why Scarborough is a good place to work, live, work, and play. But let me tell you about them. We have some really good employers and we're proud of these employers. Certainly, when I know that if there's large employers thinking of coming to Scarborough, we'll kind of roll out the red carpet, and we value the fact that they're here, and they do some great things. For example, right now we have the highest rates of COVID in concentration in Canada, and these folks have really stepped up quite admirably. TELUS, for example, has been leading the telecoms getting together. Making food meals for first the responders and the healthcare workers, providing telecommunications for them and so on. You've had a lot of money come forward from these companies as well. Again, the TELUS Friendly Future Fund, Bell Foundation, Bell Let's Talk, Maple Leaf Sports and Entertainment, Scotiabank, Rogers, Bank of Montreal, Bring Back Toronto meal program. And they stepped up to help our hospital in the COVID, and that's what you would expect of large companies in a community like this. So my hat goes off to them. They've done a fine job. I will also mention you have other employers that have taken a different way of helping us during this pandemic. You have Schefter Corporation donating a lot of money to the health network and so on. You also have Park Property Management, which has donated not only to them, but also their partners, a huge amount of money and support for the food banks, for the people who are most in need. And it's great to see an organization like Park Property Management helping those that are most in need. And that's why they're so important. And that's why I wanted to give them a shout out. Next, please. As Larry mentioned, we have a very strong business association. I'm so proud of all they do. And they're helping our businesses network and with social development and consequently then creating jobs and growing our economy. The characteristic I really like about our smaller businesses is that they're all globally linked. Many are linked, are businesses that have been started by people who years ago maybe were new Canadians or are new Canadians now, but they haven't lost the link to their culture and the country. So we have a globally linked small business group, and they're all pretty tech savvy. We have local business improvement areas as well that when you see the Taste of Lawrence, for example, or activities on Kennedy Road, these are small, these are the local business improvement areas doing things for the community, providing a really good community event and then also helping themselves to make sure that they thrive in this economy. Next, please. And then, of course, I think all of you know the international attention we're getting for our food, where people from who have had restaurants from all over the world are now in Scarborough and are bringing their best recipes and meals and sharing them with Scarborough residents and residents across the city. So that's I wanted to just shout out to all of that. Next slide, please. So I talked about business and the institutions. The institutions are really, really important to our community, and they're called anchor institutions. And they're called anchor institutions because they've invested hundreds of millions of dollars, sometimes billions of dollars in Scarborough, and they're not going anywhere. They're here for the long run, and they're part of our community. By them, I mean the Toronto Zoo and Centennial College, UTSC, and the Scarborough Health Network, and so on. Centennial College is just an amazing place. One of the world's first community colleges. People around the world and institutions have followed their lead. They now have campuses around the world, but they're so strong in terms of bringing people in and teaching them from around the world and teaching Scarborough students and getting them some really fabulous skills and so on. Next, please. I don't have to say too much about the Scarborough Health Network in terms of just everybody knows what heavy weight they are lifting over COVID. And man, have they ever stepped up. You know, I was just so impressed when, first, I know how tough a job it is for them to do that, you know, during COVID, but they're also then got asked to help with the nursing and retirement homes as well. So they do such a good job. And I just wanted to point out that the community's increasingly, and I'm proud that they're very much behind the health network. I have the activity of the Women in Philanthropy here with their SIP shop and Celebrate Women, raising tons of money for the hospital. But it's not just them, it's the family foundations. You have the Chinese Community Foundation, the Tamil Foundation, the Caribbean Foundation, the African, and families that are associated with that as well. So everybody's stepping up to make sure that our healthcare is supported in our community. Next, please. The Toronto Zoo, I won't go into too much detail, but I'm so excited about the revitalization. You're going to be hearing from Dolph DeJong in another talk coming up, but they're already a great zoo, but the renewal is so exciting. And once they get the new conservation campus and community hub completed, it's going to really brand that aspect of Scarborough as well. Let me move on to number 3. And I'm going to talk a little longer about our people and culture. I'm going to kind of drain this slide, and I call Scarborough kind of a world within the city. The bottom left photo is, of course, Mayor Tory at the Rib Fest. Like, I've seen Mayor Tory so many times in this sort of a pose. I thought that once he finishes his job in mayor, he's got all the skills he needs to be a photographer's model. So he's got another job sitting out there. So he's a striking pose every time he gets a photo. But, you know, when I go to the Rib Fest, which is, I think they have about 150,000 people, which it makes it the largest entertainment venue in the Eastern GTA. But the unique thing is that when I go there, I pause, I stop, and I look around, and I see folks from the Chinese community, the Tamil community, Afghanistan, Pakistan, from Bangladesh, from India, the Philippines, the Caribbean, Jamaica, Trinidad, Guyana, Europeans, Nigerians, Ghanaians, all enjoying the music, all sitting beside each other, talking to each other, and enjoying the food. Ironically, the food is being served by Americans, but you know, I thought, man, if I could only bring people from the United Nations to the Rib Fest and say, this is how people live together and how they care for each other. We like each other. We enjoy each other's company. The top left slide is the Scarborough storefront. And there's a lot of need, and it's our institutions and our neighbors have filled some really important needs. You know, we have the highest level of working poor in Canada. We have twice the number of people on social assistance than the rest of Canada. And we have high unemployment, but it takes organizations like the storefront to step in and for new Canadians to say, hey, this is how you get your credentials. This is a computer you can use. This is how you get a driver's license. If you need some food, this is where you go to get it, and so on. So they're serving a very valuable need. The bottom right is the Victoria Park Hub. Again, helping working women and families. And I saw a really great quote when I was researching it from a woman from, I think she was from Sri Lanka, I believe it was, but she said, I didn't know anybody in Canada when I came to Canada, but I walked in the working, the hub in Victoria Park, and now I know a lot of people and they're my friends. Well, isn't that great? The top one is the Rosewood Food, well, was the Rosewood Food Drive, is now the Rising Sun Food Drive. But I wanted to point out with this, just, I'm not sure if we have Saifu Lau on the call. I know Courtney Fisher is, but just that these are residents who saw the need in North Scarborough, the need for food security and the need to be helping in Scarborough. And they initiated this, and it's just incredibly successful food drive to help people in need. These are neighbors. These are not, you know, paid folks that have to, these are neighbors that are helping neighbors. And there's so much I could say. I can't go on too much longer, but I also don't want to leave out the fact there's some mosques. We have the Chinese Cultural Association, Tamil Cultural Association, Caribbean Cultural Association, the family foundations, the social workers and community workers and city staff. And we have, I know Ian Brown is on the call. He does an incredible job. And also Paul Zuliani, a planner. So we're all working together to help each other. And I think that's great. Next slide, please. So we're a community that cares. Again, in researching, I came across Feed Scarborough, the Scarborough Food Security Initiative. And it was started by an executive chef called Suman Roy. And he has been so successful. He has 4 food banks, 3 mobility trucks, food mobility trucks. He's does work such as, it's similar to the Agincourt Community Services, with their Dorset Park food bank and other food banks and so on. So, you know, when we see the need, we come together. Next slide, please. Continue with the community that cares. This is a really, the poster here is a very, I wish it was larger, but it's Janice Smith. And if you know Janice Smith with SNAP, just a firebrand leader. I know she's got some serious illnesses right now, and I pray for her that she recover. But you know, she said, Dave, we have an election coming up. Our accepted, unless you're already probably in office, you're not going to be given any profile. So we need to give these folks who are running, and dozens of people run for municipal office. It's not just the 6. we need to give them profiles. So she said, will you facilitate it? I says, of course I will. And you know what really struck me there is we have some great political leaders, but man, we have other leaders out in the community that are just fabulous. So we have leaders, we're respectful of our leaders, and we honor our leaders. And that's why I put a Walk of Fame star up there as well. Great organization. Spro's going to be associated with that very shortly. And I go to that website and see who's there. Next slide, please. Again, Janice also stepped in and said, you know, a lot of people on the world stage get celebrated and get recognition, but there's so many people in Scarborough that are doing so much. So we wanted to have an award of excellence. And again, she made sure that happened. Just to start summarizing this piece of it, we're respectful of people of different opinions. We're proud of our multiculturalism. I've been to the Tamil Fest and the Afro-Caribbean Festival. And so we're very proud of that aspect of our life in Scarborough. Next, please. I want to move on to, and I almost should have made this a separate piece or a separate thing that I was proud of, but writing, art, music, and performance is really taking off gangbusters in Scarborough. And I know Derek Spooner's on the call, but Derek and his crew at Scarborough Arts are the spark that makes so many things happen in our community. Great local arts and local art organizations. If you've seen the Scarborough sign, this is due to Scarborough Arts. We also have great novelists with Catherine Hernandez, world-renowned authors and musicians, performers and actors. And here's Lily Singh making her way onto the North American stage as a TV host. Next, please. One of the good things about putting this presentation together, I got to see folks that I wouldn't necessarily know, particularly on the hip hop and the rap scene. I know what you're thinking about me being involved with hip hop and rap. And I know you're thinking, Dave, you're too old to do that. But when I drilled down into it, I saw, man, are these folks spectacular. Cardinal Official, I think that's his name, but nominated for 15 Juno Awards. Record producer with Rihanna and Lady Gaga. His song Dangerous went to #3 on the Billboard charts. Yeah, Scarborough. Of course, we all know Mike Myers. We're so proud of The Weeknd. I wanted to point out Des McAnuff, though. It's a name you may not know, but if you've seen the Jersey Boys, a play that's gone around the world, that came out of the head of a Woburn Collegiate student, Des. Just tremendously creative, but he wrote, developed, and brought Jersey Boys to the stage. He's currently at Stratford. Others, again, Bare Naked Ladies, Doris McCarthy, Randall Adjei. I've heard Randall do the spoken word, and he's just spectacular along with his RISE organization. Next slide, please. So we're proud of these residents that really have pushed up into the world stage. They're from Scarborough. I came across a really good quote. And when I started researching, well, I got Huffington Post talking about Scarborough. I've got certainly a lot of media. In fact, I did an interview with Bloomberg News just yesterday about Scarborough. But Vice featured Scarborough, and I want to read this out. It said, almost 20 years after its amalgamation, Scarborough still feels like an island of its own. Visit a party or basement jam anywhere in the GTA, and guaranteed, whenever a crowd is asked to rep their location, Scarborough always garners the loudest roar. Some of this pride comes from the fact that the city's a vast cultural space. Just as important, though, is the rich history of Toronto hip hop roots that come from here. Isn't that great? Next slide, please. And I would be remiss, and I love the Scarborough Philharmonic Orchestra. I've been a financial supporter from it from time to time. But this orchestra is so good, they score Hollywood movies. Again, you know what? These days when I see a new artist or somebody, I always look for, okay, is there a Scarborough there somewhere? But even our orchestra, and there's the Cathedral Heights Orchestra that also does incredible stuff. But they're a great orchestra and certainly deserve our attention. So that finishes #3. Let's go to #2. In terms of what makes Scarborough a great place to live, work, and play, and it's got to be our youth. We give out scholarships called the Paul Harris Scholarship to deserving youth. And the two photos of the youth in a row there are examples of the scholarships given out. It helps to pay for a good chunk of their first year university. Very important. You know, Scarborough youth that have 99% averages are going to get their way paid through. But these folks have high averages, they have high volunteer activity, and they're leaders in their high school. But they have everyone has a backstory. They may have one parent, they may have severe health problems in the family, they may be refugees, they may have had trauma. So that it's designed so that the guidance counselors say, you know, this person really deserves something, which is really great. About 3 years ago, I had a chance to have dinner with one of the recipients, and it was a father, a daughter, and the son who was the recipient. And there's no mother, and I didn't ask, where's the mother? Just wouldn't do that. But I knew that he came from a Central Asian country. He had some great credentials, but just couldn't get in the workforce, which meant that financially it was struggling. But their son and daughter were doing very well, and all credit to Scarborough teachers. And so they got the Paul Harris Award. I had the good fortune to touch base with him about 3 months ago. He was actually food bank. I go, that's great. And I said, how's your son doing? He says, well, you know, he's in pre-med and he's now working in a lab researching a cure of COVID. I go, what? After that small length of time, you've accomplished so much. So we got to be proud of our youth. At the top, I have, again, Scarborough Walk of Fame has Rising Stars for youth. And this is Ravicha Ravnathirian. She is helps and volunteers and mentor girls in the Bangladesh community through science, technology, engineering, math. Incredibly important in this community. But you know, that's a volunteer job, and she does such a wonderful thing. The last image I have is I saw this on a T-shirt. In fact, I saw it on the RibFest, but I knew about it earlier than that. It's called Straight Outta Scarborough. And if you've seen the movie Straight Outta Compton, you'll see why this is important to Scarborough. Compton is a place just south of Los Angeles. It's a separate municipality, and it's a place where all of Los Angeles County has low expectations of. Yet in Compton, people do such marvelous things in sports and entertainment and academics and so on. So it pushes way above its expectations. And so it's been adopted by the Scarborough youth. And one thing I really like about the youth I've met, they have attitude. You know, that's kind of in your face. I'm from Scarborough, and I think that's just great. So next slide, please. We have a lot of emerging youth talent. The top photo is the Wave Collective up in Malvern, and these are youth helping youth to get recordings, get music, might do films, all the rest. They do a really great job. And the Sister Sound system was supported by Scarborough Arts as part of the East Music program. But you have young women who have great talent in music, instruments and so on, but need to get some help getting perhaps their first recording done. So that, again, to try to get them, their talents shown to other people. And next, please. So I'm down to number one. Number one is our potential. We've done really well. We've had a fight for a lot of things in our community over the years, showing obviously the Scarborough subway is something that we've really had to work hard for. Nuish Blanc is just an incredible event, and everybody's been there, so this is just phenomenal. So, you know, but the potential for arts is so much higher. Continue, please. As you all know, we have transit that's going to be coming and helping with our access, our ability to get around, but also create economic development and so on. So that's important as well, and also makes Scarborough the potential for a great place to live once that happens. Next, please. We have investments in new community facilities. So this is the Clark Arts Center and the Guild. Again, I'm a big advocate for living arts facility and arts investment and so on. And I'm so thrilled to see that this is coming forward to really kind of help to accent and support Scarborough's art scene. Next slide, please. One of your folks introduced himself having an interest in new suburbanism, and it's interesting. The call I had with Bloomberg News yesterday was on new suburban. He asked, "Why does this come from Scarborough? Why is this idea coming from Scarborough?" Because we have an institute, a think tank that focuses on that. I said, Scarborough's been, we've been kind of in a place of tension in the city for a long time, and things that some people in the city were saying about Scarborough. A lot of planners and young architects were saying, this just isn't true. This isn't the case. So we started researching, like, how can we make, when we're remaking our community and adding to community, how can we make it the best there is? And so we've been looking around the world. This is in Santa Clara, California, as an example. So we have a new LRT coming in, but it's at each stop on the LRT, they're building what's called transit villages. And so this top slide here shows a subway or a transit LRT stop with an entertainment venue. I had a chance to see what was going on in Golden Mile recently, and I was really thrilled actually by the Daniels Corporation, because they have decided that in the Golden Mile area, it's not just going to be condos, but it's going to be a sub-campus of UTSC, sub-campus of Daniel, the entertainment space, performance space. It'll be a place where you can grow your own food. It'll be linked to the natural environment. So it'll be a village. And to me, that's kind of one of the elements of new suburbanism, so that we create villages as we move forward. And if we do it right, it'll be a kind of characteristic of what Scarborough is about in the next generation. Next, please. Again, I'm talking as a planner. I like what I see at the Scarborough Town Center. I know there's a lot of different views on that, but it's already a place where people come from all across the GTA, or come to from the rest of Canada and even Western New York State, come to the Scarborough Town Center. And I'm thrilled to see the investment that's happening there through Oxford Properties. And I'm sure it'll be a very good space as well. Next slide, please. And just finishing off, then we have the investment at the UTSC, and with the UTSC, they've had their open house in their secondary plan this week. But I was thrilled to learn that there's going to be a medical school there. There's going to be theaters and restaurants there. There's going to be computer techie schools there. So it will eventually be kind of a very, very strong campus and academic place in the GTHA and dare say in Canada. So see them investing and actually almost usurping what you see downtown, the downtown campus, but characterizing Scarborough as an academic center hotspot as well. Next, please. I'm just going to finish off by saying that back to our youth, we have a lot of up and coming musicians. And so they're surely a wonderful potential future. We have had an opportunity to listen to Dynasty Williams, very good music. I often thought if I had a radio station, I could play Scarborough musicians all week long. And then John Samuels, again, edgy music, rap, but again, edgy. It's really good, thoughtful music and different than kind of what you see out there. That kind of wraps up my top five. We have good bones. We have great businesses and institutions. We have wonderful people and culture. We have tremendous youth, and we have huge potential. I'd just like to end by thanking Emily Peltier for helping with the presentation. Happy to take comments, questions, but even more important to hear what your thoughts are on your places and what makes Scarborough a great place to live, work, and play.
Thank you so much, Dave. That was fantastic. I've only been in Scarborough for 10 years and I learn something new every day, but I learned about 15 new things tonight just from that quick presentation. So thank you so much. And we're going to turn it over to you to chat with us about any questions you have for Dave or any special places. But there's a couple of things that it's going to bring up from the chat. And I think it's Bosco, the newest resident here, who just happened to say he just moved in last week and his wife is a published author. So him and The folks from Scarborough Arts were going to connect with, that's great, very good that they're going to do that. And Derek Spooner from Scarborough Arts also recommended that we pay attention to the fact that there is some local food critic, Howard Tam, his Twitter is Eat More Scarborough, with Scarborough with the new spelling. He showcases the best restaurants in Scarborough with histories of cuisines, neighborhoods, and people in Scarborough. The one question that came up is from Carol Baker is, has Section 37 monies issued been addressed yet? This was an article from the Star from last year. I know Section 37 monies is often a difficult discussion, and is there, what's happening with that from your view of the world, Dave? Anything that you can suggest, or?
Yeah, it's again, there's a bit of tension, I think, between Scarborough and other parts of the GTHA on Section 37. Section 37 is basically when a developer wants to do a development, a certain amount of money has to be set aside to be given for either affordable housing or for community amenities and so on. So what was happening is that downtown councillors, two particular councils had $500 million of money, and for two Toronto councillors to have $500 million to play with, I think everybody in the province was going, hey, we can't even get that in Mississauga. So the province stepped in. They said, no, we have to find a fair way of distributing this money. I don't think they've quite found it yet, but I think under the new bill, one way, it's they've done a much better job of making sure it's distributed. How it's all going to work out, I think we're still too early to see how it helps communities. It definitely will be in a community, but how it helps is still a matter of debate.
And a couple of comments about the presentation. I believe that this presentation will be available on the SCRO website, but also some suggestions that this presentation should also go to Scarborough Community Council. I'm not sure if Councillor McKelvey is on the call yet, whether she could jump in and say a few words if she is. That would be great.
Hi, actually, and I've been listening the whole time, but I have been multitasking, so I didn't have my camera on because I was having two calls, but I couldn't miss the opportunity to listen to Dave. Congratulations on the launch of our Scarborough, and it's absolutely perfect that Dave Hardy is your first speaker. And I do want to share that I first met Dave 1,500 kilometers northwest of Toronto, northwest of Scarborough, and he told me about all the great work that Rotary was doing with Renew Scarborough and suggested that I get involved. And of course, I was hooked upon meeting the team and all the people there. And I did notice that we have 8 original board members here on this call. So just a quick shout out to them. So of course, Dave, Gerard, Harry, Carol, John, Mimi, Marg, and the wonderful Reka that put it all together and kept us in line are here. And the fact that they're all there really says that this is like Hotel California, where you can check out anytime you like, but you can never leave. And I did hear Larry at the start encouraging members to join. So do join, but no, it's a lifetime commitment, but you'll very much enjoy it. Hearing Dave's remarks, I will say one of the ones that always comes home that Dave says is that Scarborough is a world within a city. And Larry also pointed out at the beginning that what you do matters and that you do have the voice. You have a voice that is being heard from people. And I want you to know that's very much true. Most of the debutants we hear at council are from downtown Toronto. And while the pandemic, we've seen a shift of that with some more Scarborough residents coming out because of the virtual setting, we overall don't have enough coming forward. And the members that grow, you're the ones that I see out there time and time again. And it really is making a difference. And so please do continue to do that. Next week is the deputations for budget. I know we've shared that with some of you. I hope we'll see you there. But do know that I think Scarborough's in a really good position right now. At City Hall, 4 of the 8 members on the mayor's executive are from Scarborough. So you have the chair of budget committee, the chair of infrastructure environment committee, the chair of economic development, and the chair of general governance and licensing are all from Scarborough. So having Scarborough residents come out really helps us to convince all of our colleagues about the need for investment and how there is an enormous return on that investment. And there's just so many great things happening in Scarborough. So Dave, I'm so happy you were the first speaker. I hope I see you again in Scarborough soon, not 1,500 kilometers northwest of here. And for the rest of you that are there, it's so nice to see you on screen. Please know that I miss you. I'm also available to answer questions anytime.
Thank you so much, Councillor. Does anybody have any questions? We can do it either two ways, either in the participants tab at the bottom, there is a raise hand function, or you can just do it the old fashioned way and raise your hand, even though there's a number of screens we'd have to scroll through. Anybody want to pose a question to Dave, or just a comment, or maybe there's lots of secret and some wonderful spots within Scarborough. Maybe you have something you want to add to the discussion. Go ahead, anyone.
Hi, it's Denise Bacon, and I'm just going to turn my video back on.
All right, go ahead, Denise.
Hi, Dave, thank you. Wonderful. It was a wonderful presentation and just reminds me how lucky we all are to be here. Scarborough so often gets a bad reputation in the media. They highlight Scarborough anytime somebody's window breaks. But nevertheless, it's great to see so many different little projects by different people to raise the profile of Scarborough. So I want to just do two shout outs. One to all the various community associations that are doing their part to lift their part of Scarborough. And the other is to just encourage people to follow on Mike Adler's initiative of #RealScarborough. And let's all take more pictures and post that on Instagram and Twitter and wherever to showcase what a wonderful place we are, where we live. Thank you.
Thank
Hi,
you. Anyone?
yes, I do. Stacy, hi everyone. Good evening.
Hi, Stacey,
Scarborough
go ahead.
resident, and I have a question for Dave. Such a phenomenal presentation. So one of the things I'm really interested in learning more about, to what extent, Dave, have you noticed or have heard conversations about a post-COVID economic and health recovery plan exclusive to Scarborough, especially considering it's hardest hit, not just with those suffering from the illness itself and the lack of care that's needed, but also the restaurant and the arts community is also suffering because we can't gather. So has there been, even through this network, somewhat of a strategy or a plan that we can present to council with some solutions so that we can kind of rebuild and move forward?
Yes, and let me assure you, you're not the only one who's thinking about this and how important it is. The Scarborough Business Association have focused on the renewal and recovery many times, and and they've been helping to push the city to step up. And I'm pleased we have Ian Brown from the city here to focus on really what's really needed in our business community in Scarborough. But you mentioned the arts. There's so much more we need to do. It's been really tough. So we recovery report that came out that was like something like 55 recommendations. It could be more. So we need to respond to that and say, hey, this works for Scarborough, this doesn't work, and this is what you need to do. So frankly, SCRO and SBA are advocacy organizations, and certainly linked with Derek Spooner and his group and all the other arts groups in Scarborough. We need to, one of the things I said, we talk to each other, but we really need to talk to each other a lot more, because what we can do in one part of our culture has to be able to help another part of our culture. We need to work together.
Fantastic, thanks. Any other questions? Just in the chat, there was a very amazing piece of statistic there from the Rising Sun Food Drive Foundation, sourced over 40,000 pounds of food in 2020. Unbelievable, up from the 2,200 pounds of food the year previously. So, you know, when Scarborough needs to come together, they do come together, and that's just a very good example of the sort of things that can happen here. And I'm cognizant of the time. It's 5 to 8. We are going to close off at 8 as we have promised. And there's a few remarks to just give us some next steps and what's going to happen from our president. But we'll have time for 1 or 2 more questions or comments. There's lots of good discussion in the chat. If you haven't looked at that, there's other things I won't mention here. You can see that for yourself.
Shwani has his hand up.
Okay, Shwani.
Oh,
Shwani?
yes. Thank you very much, Gerard, and thank you, John. What I'm just going to echo what Dave just said. We need to work together for the betterment of overall Scarborough. Like SBA, we did take the topics every day, every week, and bringing for the, especially for the COVID perspective, and SCRO now joining hands. Let's do it together for the better of Scarborough, for the Scarborough resident. Scarborough has suffered a lot in every respect, and not just the population wise. We are multi-generational, living in the houses, so suffering from so many different aspects to help everyone living in Scarborough. I think that's a very good initiative, and we would love to join it, and we'd love to wish you all the very best for that. Thank you, Dave. It was a phenomenal presentation. Good.
Thanks.
Yeah, it's a good kickoff for sure for this series. And just reminding everyone that the series will continue every other week. So just watch for those notices, and we will have lots of good discussions in the coming weeks about all things Scarborough. One last question before we
Hi.
turn it back over to, yeah, go ahead.
Erin here. Sorry,
Erin.
I've worked with Dave in the past, and he's great. And I'm so pleased I wanted to definitely see this. And I wanted to ask how we can participate. You mentioned organizations like this one that advocate, and so how can we support? How can we contribute? Because I think I echo what others are saying. How do we ensure that Scarborough is being recognized, as well as getting the word out on some of the great things that we do there? I'm seeing so many familiar faces and names on the screen, and I'm really pleased because I've worked with Bluffs Monitor. I see Scarborough Arts. Hi, Derek. You've all been amazing, and I want to ensure that we continue that, and that it just stays strong. And one last shameless plug: because of Scarborough Arts and their support, I got accepted into the Toronto Fringe, and I just got confirmation today. So my good news. So
Congratulations.
there you go. Scarborough represents.
Way to go, Derek.
Just
Thanks.
congrats, Aaron. Great job. And I didn't mention the Theater Guild, but again, a really important part of the community. So it's great. Thank you. Larry, I will turn Aaron's question over to you.
Yeah, this is a terrific start in terms of bringing this community together. And I'm so pleased to see this level of engagement, even in a virtual and large forum, which always makes it a bit more challenging. And I'm seeing a whole bunch of questions come through now, which we won't get a chance to get to tonight, but hopefully we'll get a chance to get to later. But one in particular that and Gerard, I don't know if you can answer this question, or maybe Dave, whether you can answer this question. The Renew Scarborough report that was done through the Rotary Clubs, do we know if that's on our website? If it's not, it probably should be, because that was the genesis of so much about what we're talking about tonight. So, Stacey Ann, thanks for making that comment, and a few others as well.
It was on the previous website. Maybe probably didn't get propagated across, so because we lost that website.
Okay, so we'll make a point. We'll make a point of getting that up again.
Yeah, not lost.
Yeah. Okay. So thanks for that, Stacey Ann and others, and thank you, Dave, for your talk and for reminding us all why we should feel proud about living in Scarborough. Living here isn't a consolation prize for us. It's a choice that we've all made, and we've made for a whole host of positive reasons, and we should be proud of the fact that we've chosen to live in this place, and that we're passionate enough to come together in this kind of forum and through other community organizations that we're connected with to try and make Scarborough an even better place than it is. So I really, really appreciate the fact that you've all chosen to come to our first gathering tonight. And also Councillor McKelvey, Jennifer, our founding president of SCRO, and as I mentioned earlier, the chair of Scarborough Community Council. Thank you for coming tonight, and obviously you're welcome back anytime. That brings us to the close of tonight's program. I just want to remind everyone to please take the time to visit our website, scro.ca, to become a member of SCRO. Let's all work together to bring a strong voice to Scarborough advocacy. And I also want to thank Mark Middleton and Gerard Baribeau, who I think a lot of you know, fellow SCRO board members, who came up with this Our Scarborough idea and who really did the heavy lifting to put this program in place, and also other SCRO board members and volunteers who've helped to promote the program and manage the registration logistics.